And welcome everyone. This is Michael from the Marks Group Live. Excited to be here today teaching the user class Forecasts and the Motivator to live and in person. Today, I think we're going to get through the following items. We're going to look at how to configure forecasts, which are part of Zoho's installation. We're going to look at how to avoid the forecasts mismatch problem, which is an easy mistake to make. We're going to look at we're going to look at where to find the motivator and possibly a bug that I may have discovered. I'm not sure exactly where the problem lies, but I'll show you a workaround. I'm going to show you how to look at KPIs. We're going to take a quick look at understanding those. This will be great for those of you. This will be very easy for those of you who have already been exposed to them. And we're going to look at configuring the motivator dashboard, figuring out targets, looking at contests, and also the TV channel. Today, we're going to be spending about 45 to 60 minutes going over the classwork, and I will be available for another 45 to 60 minutes afterwards for a chat discussion where I can answer any of the questions that you provide in the chat window that's on the right-hand side of your screen, somewhere probably around there. If you're viewing this on a mobile device, there should also be a chat window there available as well, where I ask you to please place all of your questions during our class today. You'll find the chat window, I think, underneath the video window on mobile. Whether you're on mobile or desktop, that chat window is going to close a few minutes after the class is over, but I do encourage you to keep asking questions for clarity on our main web page, where you'll see a chat option on every page. Just mention that you're asking a question regarding a class topic, and one of our trainers will be able to help you out. If you're having resolution or speed issues, down at the lower right corner of your screen, you'll see two icons. There's the 4 arrows icon that makes your video full screen, and then that icon allows you to adjust the video size. We recommend leaving that or setting it to auto. But if you need to, you can adjust your screen size in case your internet speed isn't what you'd like it to be today. Also, feel free to download and follow along with our class documentation. It's not a manual, but it's a nice way to follow along, as well as being a bit of a reference after the class. Go ahead, scroll down the screen just a little bit. You'll see the download link if it's not there. If for some reason it isn't there, it's because we're still working on developing the documentation. Please do send us an email or drop me a chat message if you're keen to get that documentation, and we'll expedite that to you as quickly as we can. All right, as I go through today's class, please remember to use the chat window to ask any questions. And one more suggestion, if your screen does not look exactly like mine does, don't panic. Different versions of Zoho look slightly different, and your system administrator may have set up your screens to behave a little differently. The functionality that we're discussing today is largely common to different versions of Zoho, whether you're using Zoho 1 or whether you're using one of the other packages. I will make note of differences in feature sets later on, particularly when we look at the motivator. This is a user class. I don't think you'll need administrative privileges to access most of this functionality. So let's get to it. We're going to start with our Zoho home screen as per usual. So today we're looking at forecasting and the Zoho Motivator. These two features are somewhat related. We'll look at how you can set targets and goals using Zoho, and how Zoho can tell you about your progress toward meeting those goals. Integration with the motivator is included in all versions of Zoho, including the free version, while sales forecasting requires at the least the low-end very affordable standard edition. So let's go find it first. We'll get started with CRM Forecasts. You'll probably find that module. Let me get my cursor here. You'll find that module probably about somewhere in that list right here. If you can't find it by visual inspection quickly, you can simply start typing in the search modules. We're looking for forecasts, and there it is. Now, forecasts are not available in the free version of Zoho. Let me get rid of this window. Right. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to view my settings. Yeah, I'm going to view my settings here. I'm going to edit this. And actually, let's get started here. If you haven't seen forecasts yet, you'll see an introduction screen. It won't look exactly like this, but the next thing that you'll see is this settings screen, or settings, these settings that you can preset for your forecasting module. Let me try something here. Nope. Forecast summary. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete the entire forecast. Great. All right. So we're going to start with a clean screen here. We can create a forecast there, or we can set our targets here. Either way, we're going to wind up getting the same, setting the same information. We'll go to View Settings first, and I'm going to edit those. So I'm going to leave the role as it is, because this is how we have set up our Zoho installation. We can set our target period. So we can select monthly or quarterly targets. The target period, you have to make a decision on this. As an entrepreneur, I suspect that monthly targets may speak more clearly to your cash flow realities. As an entrepreneur personally, I don't care what happens in 3 months if I can't keep the lights on in 3 weeks' time. So to some degree, a monthly forecast probably makes more sense or in situations where cash flow is an issue. So we're going to leave that at quarterly though, because in terms of the higher level business functions, that may be something that we can simply leave that at quarterly as for the time being. Our fiscal year, that's obvious, that's determined by the accounting folk, and we mostly don't have to think about that. And finally, we have the target field. We can select one of these fields here. We can select the amount. We can select the expected revenue from deals. We can look at, there are 2 different aggregate fields, but we're going to ignore those for the time being. We can look at the amount owed, and we can look at the amount received. So this is actually interesting diagnostic information for your business. This is important diagnostic information for your business. You may think you have an intuitive sense of your cash forecasts for the next month or for the next quarter. Actually having that spelled out to you is sometimes a wake-up call. Let's see. Let's say that we're going to stay with the actual amount rather than expected revenue. We can set up more than one forecast. So, and we can adjust forecasts depending on needs. Right now, I'm just going to say amounts, and that is out of the deal fields. So I'm going to save that. So now I'm going to set the target or the forecast. I should point out, actually, let's see, we're going to select 2019, the first quarter, and here's a target. When I click in that field, I just get a cursor, but I also get values that have been entered previously. So if we've used this module in training before, so these are different values that we've entered for targets. I'll stay with 200,000. Now, remember that we told Zoho that we wanted to use the actual amount of revenue as our target. What should your target be? That's something that you will know from your own business. For myself, it's the amount that I need to keep myself or my business afloat. You don't want to be drowning in targets that you cannot possibly reach. When I click on the I next to that field, we can look at, this is really a great feature. It doesn't just tell you a little tooltip. Here we actually get the current target details. It says, based on the current target, which is 2019 first quarter, thus far, we have achieved $100,001 in sales. Those are deals that we've won, and there are $2,500 in the pipeline. This is helpful information to know in terms of contextualizing exactly where I want my target to be. What are we at now? It's late end of January, so we're 30% of the way through the quarter, and I've already reached half of my target. Maybe that's a reasonable thing to do. Maybe my cash flow isn't that smooth and all of my deals tend to be concluded in January, in which case this could be an aggressive target for me to reach based on past performance. Speaking of past performance, down below the horizontal line there, Zoho by default shows me the last quarter. My target was 300,000. I achieved 105,000 and I left 164,000 in the pipeline. I can, actually we've only been using this module for the last quarter, so it's not giving me any detail farther back. And I have to point out that this is just lesson-based data in our training platform. This is not an actual cash flow of a real business. If this were, I'd be looking at that pipeline, that current pipeline. Oops, let's bring it back. And I'd be very worried about the fact that I have only $2,500 in my pipeline and my target is for 200,000. That is a dry pipeline and not a happy thing. Depending on your business and your style, you may want to set an aggressive target, or you may want to try to build your sales team's confidence by giving them a reachable goal. For this example, I'll just stay with $200,000 as my target. Now that is an overall target. That is an overall target for, it says here, create forecast for CEO. That's the entire company's target. That's the entire organizational revenue. But we can split this up. We can divide this into roles and users. So here, just below the target, we have 3 roles. We have, let me click on that in a moment. We have the Vice President of Sales, Vice President of Marketing, and Vice President of Service. Each of these may have sales responsibility. They're certainly designated as executives, or they are higher ranking personnel in the company as we've defined it in Zoho. So let's say the VP of Sales, let's allocate 150,000 to the VP of Sales. We'll allocate no targets, no revenue forecasts for the VP of Marketing, because usually that's a cost center. And for the VP of Service, let's set $25,000 in services for the VP of Services. Now, as noted, I can also set revenue for individuals within the organization. Notice that over here, manager target, no manager, no users. These sub-roles have not been fully defined in our Zoho installation. We haven't set up people to be subordinates of these leadership roles or these management roles. Let's say that my live admin has a $5,000 target. Now, remember up here when we clicked on the I, we got current target details and previous target details. We also get that for individual roles and users on this page. So we can see that the current target detail is actually 0 has been achieved. There's 0 in the pipeline. Previously, in the previous quarter, there was nothing targeted, nothing was achieved, and there was nothing in the pipeline. When I scroll down, we can see that the live admin, currently, there are no deals here. Nothing has been achieved. There's nothing in the pipeline. In the previous quarter, the target was 300,000, 105 was achieved, and 164 was left in the pipeline. Right now, I'm going to click on Save, and now we see a forecast summary. So this is a forecast for what is going to happen. For starters, I'm going to do one thing very quickly here, something I promised I would do earlier in the lesson. We can see that there is a small problem here. There is an exclamation mark beside the 200,000, and that's not because it's a particularly good or a particularly bad number. There's an exclamation mark there because Zoho is upset. And off to the right here, it tells me that there's a target mismatch. And the reason there's a target mismatch is because I'm looking for 200,000 in revenue, but the sum of all these targets is only $180,000. So I've got 175,000 forecast here. I've got 5,000 forecast here. That means that we have a mismatch between the amount that is targeted for each individual and the total CEO revenue target. So I'm going to edit this. Actually, let's go into nope, not there. Sorry, that's the overall settings. What I can do is I can edit this. What I'll do is I could actually look at that. If I click on that, right, that's the deal. So what I'll do is I will edit this deal. I'll save that for the time. Nope, I'm going to edit this deal. Not the deal, sorry. I'm going to edit the forecast. I'm going to change my forecast because these 4 roles, the 3 management roles and the individual, that only worked out to 180,000. So I'm going to set 180,000 there, save that, and now my warning is gone. Forecasts are not readily editable. They can be edited in parts, but not in detail. So let me go back for a moment. Let's do it this way. Let's say that I want to keep 200,000 as my revenue, as my target. Let's save that there. I can either edit the amount that each subordinate role has, or edit the amount that role members have. So if I have a $20,000 shortfall, I can say that the VP of Marketing should get out there and do some selling. And let's go here and change that to 10,000. I don't know, does that do it? Yeah. Oopsie, there we go. Sorry about that. So now my target mismatch should be cleared there, but it is not cleared here. That's interesting. Let me get rid of it there. Let me get rid of the, that's right, because it's management role. Let's see what happens if we change that to, what would that be? 25,000. Does that clear the mismatch? No. Okay. So I'm still getting a mismatch here because it sees that there is a, it thinks that there is a mismatch here in terms of the total revenue versus the separate amounts. All right. My overall target is 200,000. I've achieved 101,000 of that. I have 2,500 in the pipeline. I have a shortage. This is a great function right here. My pipeline shortage is 48%. That's a really powerful thing to look at. in terms of telling me that there's not enough, there aren't enough deals in my pipeline to meet my target. The 1 indicates that there's 1 deal there and there's 1 deal there. All right. Each of my VPs has a target. Nothing achieved, nothing in the pipeline. No percentage of the target has been achieved, and the pipeline shortage is rather staggeringly large. Here, the live admin has 1 deal achieved. The target was $25,000, so the target achievement percentage rate is actually 400% over and above what is required, and there's no pipeline shortage there. That was just a forecast for the first quarter. Let's create another forecast. Let's create one for 2019, second quarter. My target there will be $225,000. The sub roles will be 175, nothing, let's say 25,000 there, and 25,000 there. So I can continue to create forecasts. Right now, my second quarter, there's nothing in the pipeline, no revenue has been achieved. This is my forecast. If I want to go back to the current quarter, there we go. Now I can't create a second forecast for the first quarter. This is unfortunate, and I wish that I could do it. It would be a very handy feature to have if I could. Why is my screen not updating? Oh, my screen is updating, sorry. It'd be very handy if I could have a forecast, if I could have multiple forecasts for the current quarter in terms of playing out if-then scenarios. But that functionality isn't part of the forecast module at this point. So I can create new targets, I set targets, and I track how those users, those individuals and managers are doing with meeting or not meeting their targets. That is the built-in forecasting tool. It's part of every paid Zoho configuration. Only the free users don't get to have forecasts. However, as I've noted before, the paid Zoho plan, I think, starts at currently $12 per user per month. So the functionality that you get out of the paid plan does not, even as an entrepreneur, doesn't strike me as being that high. Let's move over into the Motivator. This is not a built-in tool feature of Zoho. It's an additional app that you can purchase. And let me bring up the numbers. Let's see, numbers. Oh, sorry, forecast settings. I'm going to review very briefly the forecast settings, because I did create a slide on this. Those are the settings. Oopsie, there we go. Those are the settings that we've got for the forecasts. That's sort of a quick view for how you can set up any particular forecast. It's a fairly simple module, but it's also fairly useful insofar as it shows you a helicopter view of what your business revenue looks like, what your business financials look like at any given time. I don't know how common the experience is, but I do know that for some entrepreneurs, they get so lost in their own operations that it can be easy to lose track of the big picture until you bring out your checkbook. So with all apologies to entrepreneurs, actually the forecasting tool is helpful in terms of keeping your eyes wide and brutally open sometimes to the financial realities of your business. So let's look at the Motivator. Let's look at prices for the Motivator, and let me go there. All right. So the Motivator actually does come for free. Astonishingly, this is a fun little tool to use in terms of motivating your workforce, in terms of motivating yourself if you're an entrepreneur. in terms of giving you visibility into your performance. The free tier of the Motivator includes public dashboards, company scorecards, one contest, and standard TV channels. We're going to look at all of these functions in the next couple of minutes. Then at that point, the extra cost versions, the 5, the 10, and the 25 user packs, those are simply those all have the same functionality. It's just a question of how many users you have. Let's see. Oh, how do you get to the Motivator? By typing motivator.zoho.com, or let's see if I can do this here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this window down ever so slightly. No, I'm not. I'm going to scroll up. There we go. Now, there are a couple of ways to do it. As I said, you can enter motivator.zoho.com into your browser. You can also click on My Account, and then up in the upper left corner, you have a bunch of apps. You have a list of apps here, and you'll find the Motivator under Sales and Marketing. Now, I'm actually not going to go there, and I have not determined whether this is a bug or not. I haven't determined whether it's a browser issue or where the issue lies, but I have had difficulty getting all aspects of the Motivator to work under Firefox. I don't know if I did restart. I did try turning it off and on again with no success. But what I did discover was it works just fine in WaterFox, which is based on the same code as Firefox. So I will admit that some aspects of Motivator I have had trouble with it under a certain browser. Your mileage may vary. Let's see. So we've looked at the prices for Motivator. What's cool about Motivator is that you can get started with it for free and then add more features if you find that it works for you and your organization. Cut people loose on it, experiment with it yourself, see if you like what it does for your organization, and then add users or add functionality, add the paid functionality if it works for you. So we've looked at how to get to Motivator, how to get into that app. Whereas forecasts in Motivator are focused almost entirely on dollar amounts. The Motivator gives you a more holistic or a broader view of your business activities in terms of how your business is currently operating rather than the bottom line sort of stuff. Before I do much inside Motivator, I will give you a very quick background on what a KPI is. If you have a business background, you may be familiar with the idea of a KPI. It'll be old material for you. But in case you're not, a KPI is an abbreviation for a key performance indicator. And that's very fancy speak. It's a lovely 3-letter acronym for something important that you can measure in your business. What you'll notice here on the screen is that we have those 5 boxes, and each box contains a number. There's a reason for that. KPIs are typically things that we measure. We measure them in terms of absolute numbers. In one of my business, I have an intern whose job it is to call our warm leads and set up meetings between the lead and the sales team. The KPI, or the key performance indicator for that intern, are the number of calls made to leads and the number of events that are scheduled as a result. So the real world context is take the lead, contact the lead, try to get a meeting with the sales team. If the intern is successful in getting a meeting with the sales team, then the sales team can go on, attempt to make the deal, close a sale, and so that the KPIs for the sales team would be meet with client, close sale. Whereas the KPI for the intern would be call the lead and set up an event. All right, let me do this. Good. Let's get back to the motivator. Going across the very top here, we've got the Zoho Motivator. Right there, we've got dashboards, tickets, contests, and TV channels. So these are four main functions that we find inside the Motivator app. Dashboards are collections of information. Targets are amounts of are targets that we can set in terms of, let's say that I want my intern to attempt to set up at least 2 meetings per week. That would be a target. Or make 10 calls per day. That's another target. A contest is what happens when you take a target and you turn it into a competition. So targets can actually be converted into contests that run over a certain period of time. And a TV channel is actually provides real-time dynamic visibility of your dashboard. So basically, a TV channel is an animated version of your dashboard, or a slideshow version of your dashboard. I can either I can view contests that I'm participating in or contests that I'm observing. My targets can be a scorecard, they can be a personal target. And my dashboard, well, I can have multiple dashboards here. If you've done any work in Zoho's reporting module or in Zoho's dashboards, you'll have some experience with the way that Zoho's Motivator allows you to configure dashboards. All right, just below that top row, I have a secondary control row. Home tells me which dashboard I'm in. There it is. I can create a KPI. That is a component here that shows me a KPI. I can create a target and show that on my home page. I can create a contest and show that on my home page. I will get back to these in a few moments. Off on the right, I can filter what it is that I'm seeing on my dashboard. And then there's the More button where I can control the last few items. I think we'll get into, we'll probably get into more of these a little bit later. Let's walk through these first 5 KPIs. These are the ones that are available by default. They come when they show up when you start up your Zoho instance. So we have leads created, deals created, how many sales were won, how many sales were lost, and the amount of revenue generated. So those are the 5 KPIs, the key performance indicators, that are available by default when you start up the Zoho Motivator. And all of these default to being available, or these are defined as across the company this month. So just reading this is the KPI is how many leads were created. That's 7. It's down 42% for the company this month. That down 42 means relative to the company last month. There's an ellipsis here, and if you have been working with Zoho for a while, say even 10 minutes, you will probably know that the ellipsis means there's something to click on here. Take a look at this. And certainly, of course, there is. I will get more into these 9 items in a moment. So here we have, this is a KPI. The KPI tells me that these are deals that were created in the company this month, and that is down 33% from last year. Sales won is down. We won a single sale. That's down 67% from last month. And then our sales lost, well, we lost one sale, which is 100% up from the same time last month. So this month, company this month, 1 sale. Now what's interesting here is the minuses. These are down 42%, down 33%, down 67%, up 100%. Well, what happens is these are all red. These numbers, revenue generated is $100,001. That's down 3% from previous month. The red means not so good. If any of these were good, the color would be green. All right. Let's go to the ellipsis. Actually, no, let's look at the filter for the whole dashboard. Let's set a filter here. I can set a filter that alters the people that are being reported and the period during which the reporting is happening. So right now it's set to everybody, but I can say I can filter the entire dashboard for an individual user. And up here now I see that there's a filter for the live admin, and all refers to the time periods that were specified in the definition of the dashboard. So this is for the TMG live admin, 7 created, 2 deals created, 1 sale won, 1 sale lost. Now the reason this looks exactly the same as for the company is because this is our training platform, and we basically only have one user that operates on the trading platform, or we only have one identity, the TMG live admin, that operates on the training platform. To get rid of the filter, I click on that. Now this filter filters the entire dashboard. I can filter individual KPIs. So let's actually look at one of the KPIs. Let's dig into this one. The ellipsis, of course, means there's something for us to do here. So I can find out about this KPI. This is a hover. This tells me that this KPI shows me the sum of all leads created. It just adds them all up, or it should be the count of leads created. It draws information from the leads module. It offers me 1 point for each record. In other words, every time I create a lead, it gives me 1 point. And it specifies that these are records created during this reporting period. And hypothetically, if there are leads that are recorded as being created in the future, it will actually count those as long as they're within the time period defined by the filter, which is this month. And the person who gets the point is the owner of the record. We will set these functions in a few minutes. Peer comparison. This is useful if you happen to have, say, a sales team, more than one person in your team. This will tell you where this individual being reported on here ranks relative to others. I'm going to skip to the bottom for a moment. Remove Kpi permanently from the system. This completely removes the KPI. You will have to rebuild it if you delete it, as I did about 30 minutes ago. Or I guess it's 45 minutes ago, just before the lesson, I accidentally deleted one of these permanently. These KPIs are simple enough that it's not very difficult to rebuild them, but you still shouldn't do it if it's going to mean more work for you, unless you learn something really positive from the experience. I can also, perhaps more usefully, remove the KPI from this dashboard. When we start messing around with dashboards and customizing them to show us the information we're particularly interested in, being able to remove KPIs from dashboards is helpful. Okay, into the middle section here. I'm going to deal with targets and contests a little bit later. I can edit the KPI, or I can duplicate the KPI. Now, if you are just getting started with KPIs, if you're just getting started with the motivator, I actually recommend you duplicate any KPI before you begin to edit it. Simply because that way, if you louse it up and you have a tough time rebuilding it, you can always go back to the original. So I'm actually going to duplicate this KPI. I'm going to leave all of this as it is. I'm going to save my duplicated KPI. Actually, I'm going to edit that because it created that. I'm going to change the name by clicking on the name field, and I'm going to say MF leads created. The MF is just a signal to my fellow trainers that this is a KPI that I've created. This is a copy of the leads created KPI that came pre-installed with, oops, hello. Descriptions are good. Describing what you're doing in Zoho by using description fields is like commenting code, and that is a good thing. I've written code that is entirely unintelligible to me shortly thereafter. In fact, when I was writing my dissertation, I often wrote parts of chapters that were entirely unintelligible to me only a few hours after I had written them. But that's what happens when you're writing your dissertation at 2 in the morning. Okay, and I'm going to save that. Now here's my KPI, leads created. And now you get to see one of the less wonderful things about the Motivator module. It does take time, or actually the Motivator app, I should say. The Motivator app does take time to calculate. Not only that, it may have finished the calculation, but you may have to reload the page to see what it has calculated. So it's a useful thing. The Motivator is a great app to have, but it is not instant. It does not give you instant gratification. Let's see what happens if I reload my page. Nope, it's still thinking. So what Zoho is doing what Motivator is doing right now is it's going to the Zoho CRM and it's looking for, well, let's find out what it's looking for. It's doing the sum of leads that were created in that period. So it's still counting all the leads that were created during in the entire company during that month, the current month. All right. Let's see. So let me create a new KPI. So I can add, when I create an entirely new KPI, I have 3 different kinds of formulas that I can apply to what are called behaviors. I can take a sum. So Zoho offers me examples: records created, revenue generated, and so on. I can take an average, which would be an average of calls per week, for example, or average deal size. I can create a rate or a ratio. In other words, how many contacts were created versus leads that we created. For now, let's say I'm looking for the average size of the deal that we're closing. Okay, so I'll select an average there. Next, I add a behavior. This looks more scary than it actually is. So, behaviors define what the KPI is about. So I can say, I want to track in my deals, I want to say, in deals, I want to have the amount of the deal and let's say sales 1. Now that's if I want to copy rules from an existing behavior. Otherwise, and in fact, that's a good place to start. Let's say that I want to track sales 1, and Zoho will actually give me a rule down here. For the time being, point computation, it says, well, what counts as a point? And I can say, well, let's make the amount worth the point, or I can set a multiplier. Let's say that if I don't want to have points in the hundreds of thousands, if I want to make it more like points in the thousands, and my typical deal is worth hundreds of thousands, I'll say, I think I can do multiplied by 0.1. So that will give me, that means for every $10 in the deal amount, a person will get 1 point. Okay, so we're going to select all records within the closing date in this time period, which is okay. That makes sense. So all deals that were closed. Should we include deals that are in the future? This is actually a surprisingly nuanced sort of thing. Let's say I have a deal that is going to close. I know it's closed, the deal's done, and it's going to close within this particular reporting period, whatever period I define in the filter. If I know that the deal is going to close, maybe I should include it. On the other hand, maybe if I don't have cash in hand, I don't include it. I'm going to leave it that way for now. And who gets the points? I'll leave it as the record owner. This actually allows us to do some interesting things insofar as, let's say that a lead is created by an individual, and that lead, that whether the owner of the record changes, that record, as the lead turns into a contact and a deal is signed with that contact associated with the deal, the person who created that original record, the person who originally hunted down the lead, can still be tracked and could be credited in your point system. That is interesting. It's cool. It requires a certain amount of careful planning. It requires also that only certain people are able to modify records. Because it's entirely possible that if you're in a high stakes situation where the person who created the lead is in line for thousands of dollars in bonuses, well, if your system allows any user to go in and change the lead creator, that could lead you in strange conflict situations. All right, so only include records. Let's go down a little bit farther into this behavior. So we're going to say that when a sale is won, somebody will get 1/10 of that amount in points, and the probability of the sale, this is in the deals module, remember, the probability of the date, by the way, we set the deals module up here. Choose the CRM module you want to track. Zoho only gives me rules that make sense. So only award the points if the probability is 100%. I can add another rule there to say if the expected revenue, or let's say if the amount is greater than or equal to $10,000. So what will happen now is Zoho will only count under this, for this particular rule, Zoho will only count deals over $10,000. Now, up here, this is I almost think this should be underneath this particular selector. Under here, we see that we can only include records when they satisfy any one of the rules, or when they satisfy all of the rules. In terms of Boolean logic, if you're familiar with that, this is the difference between an or and an and. So here, if any of these conditions is true, so if the deal is 100%, or if the deal is greater than $10,000, then award the points. Or maybe we say that the deal has to be a certainty and the deal is worth more than $10,000 before the points are awarded. Save the behavior. Zoho gives me a summary right here for the CRM module deals. Select records with a closing date within that period. Award points that are the amount multiplied by 0.1. Include the future dates. The record owner is the record owner. In other words, award the points to the record owner. The probability has to equal 100%, and the amount has to be greater than or equal to $10,000. And his is interesting right here. The objective is to increase this kind of behavior. Now, earlier on, when we looked at the sales lost KPI, we saw that it was up 100%, and there was an angry looking red text underneath it that said up 100%. That's because we want our lost sales to decrease while we want our sales won to increase. So the objective determines whether or not an increase from one month to the next is regarded as a good thing or a bad thing. Let's click next. Provide a name and description. Points for large sales. Gives 0.1 of a point, actually gives 1 point for every $10 in deals closed any time in the filtered period. Next, I'm allowed to review and save this KPI. I will do that, and there it is, points for large sales. And that's coming in. Now remember earlier, a few minutes ago, the leads created was still coming in. It was still calculating that. Okay. So where are we now? Let's add a target to a KPI. Let's say that this KPI, I want to add a target to it. So I'll scroll down to set targets for this KPI. And I'll say, okay, that's the KPI. I'll set a target period of monthly. And I'll say if the average for the last 3 months, if the average of leads created was 12 for the last 3 months, and last month it was 12, maybe I want to set my target at 14. I can select whether or not I'm notified when the time is nearly up and I'm not on track. And I can also select notify me of my target status at the end of each target period. Basically, this is the amount of nagging that you want Motivator to do. So this could be seen as either being motivating, or it could be seen as roughly the motivation that you get from somebody who is nagging you to do something that maybe you'd rather not do at all. On the other hand, if it's your job, maybe it's a worthwhile nag. You have to decide how your organization handles the motivator and how it handles the messaging that comes out of the motivator. This is a personal target, so it ignores the company, the team, and I can set targets for other users, but I'm not going to do that right now because right now this is defined as a personal target. Click on next. I have a chance to review it and I can save that. But where is my target? It's not here. It's not on the home screen. It's because, although it's here, there's my target. Let's go back to my dashboard. Where's my target gone? It's because I haven't added it to the dashboard. So what I can do is I can go to here, and I thought I could add that to the dashboard here. Target. I thought I could add a target to the dashboard. Next. Save. It is added to the dashboard. but I'm not seeing it. Okay. I can add a, what if I refresh? Nope, that's not doing it. Okay, now if I go to targets, there's my personal target, and I can create a contest from the target. Now I can either do that here, or I can go to contests, and I can create a new contest. Let me go to targets. There is my personal target. I can create a target from that contest from that target. And this will simply give me defaults, very quick defaults, and it says create more leads. That's the objective. That's the objective in the behavior. And I can notify participants. So I can determine who's going to be in this and save the target. All right. Let me try this. Nope. So there's my contest. The leads created one, that's one that I just created. And I can show contests that we have run in the past. All right. Finally, let's look at channels. Contests are good. Back in Zoho, when we create leads, sometimes in the bottom right corner as we create a lead, we'll see a notification that says, hey, you've created another lead, only 6 more to go. That's part of the targets in Motivator. So that's a functionality that's related to the Motivator. And finally, let's go to channels. Here's my home channel. This is just a video of what's in your dashboard. It's like a highlight reel, and it doesn't really show you much that you don't get in a dashboard, but it's fancy, and it looks good, and it's animated, and it's a slideshow. This is the preview, and it tells me that the channel is automatically populated with items added to the home dashboard. So if I add something more to the dashboard, it'll show up here. I can manage my dashboard. I can manage my home channel, or this particular channel, and I can determine who has access to it. I can add announcements. So for example, don't forget to log all your activity in Zoho to be eligible for this month's Most Leads Found Award. I can save that. I can add more announcements. John, you've parked in the boss's spot again today. Might want to move that. So, as you can see from these announcements, this is stuff that we can either broadcast on a screen in the office. Maybe we want to embed this on an intranet. If it's, let's say, we might have an announcement like third Q2 earnings coming soon. Maybe this is something that we want to put on our website under our investors area. In which case we probably wouldn't want to mention that John is parked in the boss's spot. So this is an outreach tool. This gives you a visibility. Of course, we can decide which channel. We can have multiple channels, and we can show different channels showing different information. So this doesn't necessarily have to be particularly privileged information. We can shape our motivation dashboards so that we are showing particularly good information to people on the outside and telling the truth inside. Not that those should necessarily be different, but who knows? Maybe they are. I can make this a full screen. I can give it a slide view. I can do a 4x4 grid. Let's actually preview that on the no, not doing that. I can make it full screen or I can share it. If I share it, I can put it onto a website. I can embed this, which is kind of nifty. I can make it full screen if I happen to be controlling a monitor around the office and this is just information that I want to have available. Right now I'm going to save it. There's my grid. There's my earnings coming soon announcement. Clearly, if I had a large number of metrics, if I had a large number of dashboard items, then this grid display up here would make a lot more sense. Let's go to manage that. Let's see what other grid. Oh, we only have the 4x4 grid. Seconds between transitions, I can crank that up to 6 so that it's less obtrusive. Let's see, go to channels, home channel. Now there should be 6 seconds between 6 seconds between transitions. And again, it does make sense because I only have 7 KPIs up there. But if I had many screens of KPIs, this would make sense. So that is the motivator. The motivator is a powerful way to display information about your business. It's a powerful way to engage people within your organization, people who are part of your team. It's a powerful way for you to keep a monitor, for you to keep a view of what they're doing. It is similar to reports. So if you've dealt with reports in Zoho, you'll have similar functionality here. The motivator may be configured for you to use it in slightly for a different audience, or it may give you a different set of information. Let me just do one thing here. Let me edit that KPI and go to behaviors for this KPI. What I want to do is no, actually I'm going to leave this as it is. Yeah, I'm going to leave that as it is. All right. I'm going to go there. I want to show you a couple of the other dashboards. With any module, I can click on the module. I'm sorry, with any of these KPIs, I can click on that specific KPI and open up a graph. So even if I go to my home page, if I go to my home dashboard, I can click on any one of these and I can see a breakdown. This is leads created by day for the current reporting period. I can track this by employee, live admin. I can track it by rating, which in this case isn't terribly informative. I can show a trend line to see, actually this is not so much a trend, this is just a graph of when leads were created. I can do it for the month. Show weekly changes, show daily changes to this. I've got the pipeline stages. This is a really handy little single screen graph that shows me where we are in terms of my organization. Again, this is similar to what we would get in a report, what we would normally get in a report. So a home dashboard on Zoho. The motivator gives us another way to look at it, which may suit your interests or your style a little better. One last feature of the motivator dashboard, you can move things around. Let me go to the home where I have 2 lines, and this simply allows you to move items in a very intuitive manner. So you can group things as you need to. One interesting possible use for the motivator would be to show if you have different sales teams or different individuals on your sales team, you can show an individual report or an individual KPI for each one of them, and you can let them see how they're doing relative to each other, or you can do this for teams so that you can create a sense of visibility. All right, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I need to go to where? Here. Here's where I want to go. So this is what we took a look at today. Today, we took a look at the forecasts, and then we looked at configuring the motivator. We figured out how to configure forecasts. We looked at how to avoid the forecast mismatch error. We figured out how to find the motivator. That is motivator.zoho.com. We looked into what a KPI is and what it might do for us, why that might be a useful thing to have for us to understand in our organizations. And we looked at how to configure the motivator dashboard, targets, contests, and channels. At this point, I want to know, I'd like to know, I'm curious, does anybody have anything more that I can show you about the motivator or about forecasts? Do you have any questions based on what we've seen in today's session? If you do, please check out the chat window. I'm actually looking at it on my left screen, which is why I keep on looking in that direction. I see no questions in there, but I will be checking that for the next couple of minutes. And I'll also be checking my email to see whether anybody has questions. You can either email at support@marksgrouplive.com or michaelf@marksgroup.net. And I'll check those for a couple of minutes and see if there are any questions that come in, if there's anything else that I can show you about either the forecasts or the motivator. In the meantime, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be back in a few minutes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if there are no other questions, I haven't seen anything come in a few minutes. I do want to thank you for joining us today. Please check out the calendar section of the marksgrouplive.com website to look at upcoming trainings to see what we will be going over. If you have suggestions for other classes or how I might adjust this class to make it more helpful and more useful for you, please email us at support@marksgrouplive.com. And if I didn't get to your question today during the chat, I do apologize. Again, email us at support@marksgrouplive.com and we'll answer that way. In the meantime, thank you for attending and we'll see you next time.